After you finished writing your draft story, you know you need to edit. And while self editing is a wonderful gift to your manuscript, self editing also, by nature, is a bit short sighted. You already know what you know about your story. When your brain, helpful as it tries to be, fills in those blanks and replaces what is with what could be, uncovering what the reader can't know is difficult. Thus, having external feedback from beta readers, a developmental editor, or another trusted book buddy will help you see your blind spots so you can fill them and meet reader expectations. But how much feedback is helpful, and when does help become a hindrance? Peer review isn't reserved for academia. No matter what kind of story you've written, fiction, nonfiction, or memoir, your hard work benefits from a peer review process to help you uncover whether and how your story is advancing as expected, the characters and settings are introduced, the goal is big enough, the stakes high enough, the amount of tension there is or could be, and you've hit on certain genre conventions. Having an external pair of eyes on your writing will help you see all the problems your future readers will definitely identify, but that you're too close to see for yourself, thanks, as always, to that crafty brain of yours. Ideally, you'll ask for peer review of your story via manuscript evaluation or beta reading only after self editing your manuscript as much as you can, but before querying and submitting your story for consideration. Two common ways to get early reader feedback is to request a beta reading or a manuscript evaluation from a professional. Beta readers are often avid readers who work across the spectrum of styles and genres, but they are not editors. Both types of early feedback givers, beta readers and editors, provide written or sometimes verbal information you can use to enhance your story in different ways. A beta reader will provide you with their views of your work based on their experience and the types of books they've read. Different beta readers, being different people with differing tastes and backgrounds, will provide different opinions about what works and what doesn't in your story. An editor may provide you with a manuscript assessment that thoroughly reviews your manuscript for what works and what doesn't, as well as providing suggestions about how to make the not working bits work. You'll also receive feedback about style, point of view and perspective voice, character development, plot, settings, and more. While a manuscript assessment can never replace a formal developmental edit, it will get you closer to a developmental workup than a beta read will. However, both types of feedback are important for gaining insight into your future readers' experiences. Now that we've covered why you need feedback and the forms that early feedback may take, it's time to take those recommended changes to heart and try your best to make your manuscript better, right? Easier said than done, but here are a few methods that work well for the authors with whom I work. You know that old advice to put away your draft manuscript for a month or so before rereading it for revisions? Apply that same logic to your manuscript feedback. When reading someone else's assessment of how well your story works or doesn't, emotions may very well bubble up. After all, you wrote your story for a reason. It's important. In some cases, your story may feel like an extension of your person. To hear that it's less than perfect can often translate to you, the writer, being less than perfect. Stings, really. Gradual acclimation is then helpful to remain objective about the feedback and be able to apply it well. So compile all the feedback reports or verbal information you receive from beta readers, editors, and other early readers. Read through it all carefully and then put away the feedback for a month or so. Reading feedback and then doing your best to forget it will allow you to take in those recommended changes while retaining your creative freedom and general sanity. When you feel like you can finally tackle those changes without a panic attack, you're finally ready to start revisions. Every reader comes from a different background and has a different set of values and experiences, which means you're going to get at least slightly different feedback from each reader based on their starting points. But when you're looking at multiple feedback reports, each with something different to share, the process of turning that disparate and sometimes mutually exclusive feedback into real recommendations can feel overwhelming. Let me say this first. You don't need to incorporate every piece of feedback you receive into your revision process. Stated differently, not every piece of feedback you receive will be right for you in your book. Instead of forcing yourself to handle all the things, look for patterns in your feedback to stave off revision overwhelm. As an example, say you have a side character who is a homicidal maniac. 2 readers loved the chaos the static character brings. Very Pat Bateman. But 2 different readers hated the character. Not developed enough. There's no raison d'etre, no reason to be, no purpose for this character. Think about the function of your homicidal maniac, what purpose they serve in your story. If that character is supposed to offer a bit of levity, but otherwise isn't supposed to change, maybe they don't need a raison d'etre except comedic value. But if that homicidal maniac is supposed to be the story's main villain, elevating the character from static to dynamic is important. A good villain requires a raison d'etre, a well-defined goal, and the motivation to achieve it. I've said before that the craft of fiction lives within the drafts. And if you need some functional help on crafting well-wrought fiction, I've suggested 3 craft reads in the past for revising your story. And those books have worked well for some of the authors I've worked with. And if you need a link to that video, it's in the MetaStellar Writing Advice playlist. Revision. Change is hard but necessary. And there are a few practical steps to keep in mind. Remember, fine isn't good enough. Change is not a one and done decision. Know the revision path before you walk it. Avoid too many changes at once and stay the course. It is for this reason that I often suggest limited revisions during each rendezvous with your draft manuscript. For a book-sized work, it makes sense to draft in at least 5 passes. And here's an example of what that can look like. Rudimentary changes come in with pass 1 when you're going to smooth perspective and characters, and in pass 2 when you look at plot and settings. Your second level changes come in pass 3 with cliffhangers, hooks, and pacing, and on pass 4 with themes and message. And your third level changes come in pass 5 when you work through cadence and language. When you do the front end work of conceptualizing your feedback and distilling it into manageable chunks as you elevate your draft, you'll make it through revisions without writing yourself ragged. So, how do you make it through revisions for your story without losing your mind? Let me know in the comments and share this video with others working through revisions after receiving feedback. Happy writing!